Love Armed by the English playwright, poet, prose writer and translator Aphra Behn first appeared as a song in Act 5 of her play Abdelazar, or The Moor's Revenge, in 1677. Abdelazar is a tragedy, and this song reflects the play's themes of love, power, betrayal and emotional torment. Behn herself was somewhat of a trailblazer. Not only, as one of the first English women to earn her living as a writer, did she have to navigate a male-dominated literary world, but also, as a royalist, she risked her life working as a political spy for King Charles II. These experiences, her need for independence, her interactions with men in power, and the precariousness of her position were a likely influence on her poetry, as her works often challenged societal norms regarding gender, politics, and power. The speaker is Florella, a mere lady-in-waiting to Queen Isabella, who is in love with Philip, son of the late King of Spain. Philip's royal status places him far above her socially, and this gap in rank is probably the main reason that her love for him is not returned. She personifies love as a god, blaming him for the pain she is suffering because her feelings are unrequited, and she characterises falling in love as a battle, a zero-sum game in which there can be only one winner. She accuses love of taking sadistic pleasure from her misery as he actively seeks to harm her. She claims that he has armed himself not only with the passion in her loved one's eyes, but also with his pride and cruelty, her desire, her sighs and tears, and her languishments and fears. While she admits that love's tyranny is a product of both of them, she concludes by lamenting how she, defeated and unfulfilled, is the only one to suffer. The poem, particularly through its personification of love as a male, seeks to comment on the broader gender and social inequalities in 17th century England, where hierarchies were strictly observed and women were often denied equal agency in both love and professional life. The poem comprises 2 stanzas of 8 lines each. Each stanza itself comprises 2 quatrains, i.e. there is a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. All rhymes are single or masculine, where each rhyme falls on the final stressed syllable of the poetic line. The poem has a bass meter of iambic tetrameter, di-dum, 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 which is entirely regular apart from the first foot of the first line, where there is a metrical inversion. In other words, a trochee, dumdy, has been substituted for the regulation iam, di-dum. Love in fantastic triumph sat, emphasising the all-encompassing power that love possesses. All lines bar 1, line 7 of the first stanza, are end-stopped. This lack of enjambment and caesura give the poem a measured, deliberate pace, reinforcing the sense of finality and control in love's dominance over the speaker. The predominantly end-stopped lines create a rhythmic regularity that mirrors the inevitability of the speaker's emotional suffering, as if each poetic line marks the closing of an argument or a painful truth. The absence of flowing enjambment contributes to the poem's tone of restrained despair, where each line stands as a self-contained reflection of love's power and the speaker's defeat. Not only this, but Behn also manipulates syntax to add emphasis to particular words and phrases and to enhance the poem's already dramatic and elevated tone. She makes frequent use of both anastrophe, where there is a deliberate inversion of the word order for poetic effect, e.g. love in fantastic triumph sat, rather than love sat in fantastic triumph, and fronted adverbials, where an adverbial is placed at the beginning of a sentence, e.g. from me he took his sighs and tears, rather than he took his sighs and tears from me. Note also that Behn seems to capitalise words in a somewhat ad hoc manner, such as fantastic triumph and bleeding hearts. The capitalisation of words during this period wasn't strictly governed by standardised rules as it is today. Instead, writers frequently capitalised words when they felt like it, for emphasis or to give them significance, particularly in poetry, where capitalisation could highlight key ideas, concepts, or personifications. Behn uses the verb took, which is explicitly repeated 3 times and implicitly repeated a further 3 times, to characterise love as a parasitic creature which feeds and grows off the emotions of others, while giving nothing back but pain and sorrow. This is further enhanced by the anaphoric from in the first 3 lines of the second stanza, which highlights the one-sided, destructive and debilitating nature of love. The title, Love Armed, immediately personifies love. In classical mythology, Cupid, the god of desire, erotic love, attraction and affection, is often portrayed as a youth armed with a bow and arrow. However, Aphra Behn's portrayal of the figure of love diverges from the classical, playful image of Cupid. Instead of a charming figure inspiring mutual affection, love is depicted as a more dangerous, militaristic force. The adjective armed suggests that love is equipped with weapons, ready for battle, and capable of inflicting harm. This militarized version of love aligns with the poem's themes of emotional conquest and suffering, where love takes on the role of an aggressor or tyrant, rather than a benevolent god of romance. This darker interpretation transforms love into a symbol of power and oppression, particularly in the way it exploits and drains the emotions of both the speaker and the beloved. The idea of love being armed implies that it is ready to inflict damage, underscoring the one-sided, destructive nature of love in the poem, where the speaker suffers emotional wounds without any reciprocation or relief. Rather than a gentle force that fosters connection, love is portrayed as a conqueror, leaving behind anguish, vulnerability, and pain in its wake. The poem begins, "Love in fantastic triumph sat, whilst bleeding hearts around him flowed." The concept of love is immediately personified as a male, enthroned in a state of grandeur, while mortally wounded hearts lie bleeding profusely around him at his feet. Behn's capitalisation of fantastic triumph and the use of anastrophe, where the verb sat is placed on the end of the line, puts the focus firmly on the image of love's self-satisfaction and self-congratulation at his destructive power. The graphic image of literal bleeding hearts, with the gore flowing out of them, effectively captures the way that the speaker feels the violent, visceral pain of a broken heart because her love is not returned. The anastrophe, with its placement of sat and flowed on the end of their respective poetic lines, also contrasts love's serenity with the carnage that surrounds him and highlights his position of unassailable power. The poem continues, "For whom fresh pains he did create, and strange tyrannic power he showed." The adjective fresh here, to describe the pains of unrequited love, could carry the meaning of new as well as strong and sharp. This suggests that not only are these pains continuously renewed, indicating a sense of ongoing torment, but also that they are intense and acute, emphasizing the sharpness of the speaker's emotional suffering. The idea that love perpetually creates new wounds that are immediate and overwhelming while the old ones haven't yet had time to heal aligns with the theme of relentless emotional suffering in the poem. The use of the adjectives strange and tyrannic to describe love's power evoke the notion of love as an oppressive, alien and cruel force that dominates the speaker's emotional life. These words give love a character that is far from the idealized romantic version often celebrated in poetry. By calling love strange, Behn highlights the emotional alienation the speaker experiences, suggesting that the love she feels is isolating, driving a wedge between her and any potential for emotional fulfillment. It may also hint at the disempowerment that comes from loving someone who does not return her affections, making love itself feel alien. The use of tyrannic presents love as a dominating, cruel and oppressive force. This work evokes the image of a tyrant, someone who exercises power arbitrarily and mercilessly. Love, personified here, is depicted as exploiting its victims, subjecting them to its will without care or compassion. The imagery in the second half of the first stanza concerns the eyes. During the Renaissance, it was widely believed that the eyes were powerful conduits of emotions and desire, and that love could be caught through the gaze. From thy bright eyes he took his fire, which round about in sport he hurled. Here the speaker is addressing, albeit silently, the object of her love, the king's son Philip, in a technique known as an apostrophe. She describes how love has taken the fire or the sparks of passion from his eyes and transformed it into a weapon to be hurled or thrown carelessly about with considerable force in sport or for entertainment. This fire has clearly struck her down, causing an ignition of her desire. The possessive pronoun thy is an archaic form of the word your, with related words thou, thee and thine, and it was used in an informal, familiar manner, much as the ton, tuo or tu forms are still used today in French, Italian and Spanish. Its usage, however, says more about her tender feelings for him than it does about their relationship. As a mere lady-in-waiting, it would have been outrageous for her to thou a prince in conversation, if indeed she ever had reason to speak to him at all. She continues, but 'twas from mine he took desire enough to undo the amorous world. In return, love has taken the desire that has been ignited in her eyes, and she recognises the destructive potential of a desire that is so great it would be sufficient to undo or annihilate the very world of love itself. Note that these lines appropriately feature the only incidents of enjambment in the entire poem, and so is the only place where the speaker allows her meaning to spill over from one poetic line to the next, through the sheer force of her emotion. The second stanza begins, from me he took his sighs and tears, from thee his pride and cruelty, from me his languishments and fears, and every killing dart from thee. Behn continues her characterization of love as a parasitic force which grows in power and strength as it feeds off the speaker's and the man's emotions. The verb took in the first line governs the subsequent phrases in lines 2, 3 and 4, even though it is not explicitly repeated each time. This technique creates an effect of implicit repetition, reinforcing the relentless, one-sided nature of love in the poem. By omitting the repeated use of took, but making it understood across the stanza, Behn emphasises how love continually extracts from both the speaker sighs, tears, languishments and fears, and the beloved pride, cruelty and killing darts. Additionally, the anaphoric from in the fronted adverbials from me, from thee and from me emphasises love's insatiable appetite, creating a sense of exploitation and imbalance. Love only takes and never gives. The imbalance of power between the pair is clear as the speaker, debilitated and weak, physically and emotionally drained by what this love is putting her through, is overcome with misery and despair, while the man remains aloof and unfeeling. A dart is another word for an arrow and alludes once more to Cupid, the god of love. It is, however, a killing dart. It's not an arrow shot playfully to inspire mutual affection between lovers, but a lethal weapon designed to strike down and cause pain and suffering. The speaker brings the poem to a close by concluding that, "Thus thou and I the god have armed, and set him up a deity." In other words, the speaker and her beloved have both provided love with the weapons that have enabled him to become a deity or an all-powerful god. Although they are both responsible for this, it is she, however, who is the sole victim. But my poor heart alone is harmed, whilst thine the victor is, and free. This final contrast emphasises the speaker's suffering and emotional vulnerability, as she acknowledges that while they both played a role in empowering love, only she bears the painful consequences. Her heart is wounded and enslaved by the very force they have armed, while her beloved remains untouched, the victor and free. This dynamic reinforces the inequity in their relationship, where love is not mutual but instead leaves the speaker trapped in emotional turmoil, while the beloved escapes unscathed. The ending underscores the parasitic nature of love, where one person gives and suffers, while the other benefits without sacrifice, further enhancing the poem's portrayal of love in a man's world as a cruel and one-sided force. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques, and English literature texts.